Welcome to the Rational Optimist podcast. As much as I hate to do it, we have to talk about tariffs.
Tariffs. That's all I'm hearing. A little bit of a lull now, I guess. So, the thing is that people are a lot smarter than us that know a lot more about tariffs and trade and how all the system works have commented on this. We don't want to really talk about tariffs, if they're good, if they're bad. I think it's completely the wrong frame. And I actually think what's better than tariffs? What's better than slapping import duties on goods, which the whole goal of this is to really bring back manufacturing to America, reindustrialize America, which I am absolutely for. But the way to achieve that, I think, is to embrace America's superpower, which is innovation. Innovation brings abundance, right? Everyone wins. I think tariffs is a very short-term fix. It's almost like, I almost think of it like social welfare for companies. It's like, yeah, sure, it might be good for a while, but it doesn't force anyone to innovate. So that would be my take.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile to level set on this stuff because there's smart arguments on both sides, I think. But from a first principles perspective, we can consult our Bible, the Rational Optimist book from 2010. Matt Ridley wrote about this. He says, "The message from history is so blatantly obvious that free trade causes mutual prosperity while protectionism causes poverty, that it seems incredible that anybody ever thinks otherwise." So I think we both agree with that. Outsourcing American manufacturing did cause problems, but the way we solve those problems is, to quote Aiden from Rangeview, we win by being 100 times better. We win by automating our factories, by reducing costs, by using AI, by building more gigafactories, right?
Exactly. And we got a taste of this when we were in El Segundo, which is really ground zero for the hard tech, deep tech renaissance going on, the reindustrialization efforts in America. We got a sense of the innovation happening. Now, the funny thing is that we're saying this is the solution, not tariffs. Uniformly, everyone we talked to in El Segundo was for the tariffs, which is a little weird. But yeah, look, we met Rangeville, we met. I talked to the guys at Dirac and then Hadrian as well. And again, these guys are all innovating in their own way. We'll talk about what they're doing. What has really impressed me about meeting and talking with these founders is that you hear reindustrialization and you hear bring manufacturing back to America. And it's like, great, but how are you going to do that? And what I found is these guys have been thinking about this for, Josh Wolf has that thing, the thing you're investing or thinking about today, you should have been doing 5 years ago. Well, these guys were doing this 5 years ago when it was unsexy and nobody cared about it. So specifically Rangeview, they basically, Aidan told us they analysed over 100 manufacturing processes and they zeroed in on one to start, which is ripe for disruption, which is investment casting. You can basically think of it like high precision metal sculpting. Centuries old technique. He told us everyone in the industry was saying it's completely broken, but we don't know how to fix it. Rangeview, fresh eyes, young guys coming in. They're kind of reinventing it with 3D printing and some other technology, which me as an Irish citizen couldn't get to see. It was too dangerous for me to see.
Yep. We were sitting on the couch waiting for our meeting, and they come out and say, you guys shouldn't have been let in here. We had our meeting down the street in the coffee shop. Hadrian's the most exciting one to me. So they make factories as their product. Even though they know you can't fully automate manufacturing, their products can automate 70 to 80% of it. And their goal is to reindustrialize America by going forward, not backward. When you talk about America needs to manufacture things again, like, okay, manufacture what? I don't think anybody wants to go back to manufacturing sneakers. We need to manufacture high value added goods where people can make money from manufacturing. At the end of the day, that's the only way it's going to be self-sustaining. And you see a company like Hadrian making it happen. I didn't get to visit Hadrian, but you did. It's very exciting.
Yeah, so just for perspective, I'll show you an image on the screen. This is one of Hadrian's factory. It's basically a line, a whole row of CNC machines. Essentially, you think about the problem which Chris Power, Hadrian's CEO, correctly identified as, hey, actually America's the most important weapon system for the US military and also aerospace. It's basically reliant on this very long tail of tens of thousands of suppliers across America, which over the next couple of years, it's kind of like they were grandfathered into the system. Like, made in USA, you crazy to manufacture stuff in America? Well, these guys have been at it for 30, 40, 50 years. Now they're retiring. Chris identified this problem. Over half of all F-16s are grounded due to part shortages. America has all these exquisite, great weapon systems. Guess what? Doesn't matter if you can't make them. So Hadrian is zeroing in on the idea of essentially creating mostly robo factories to make these parts for defense and aerospace. Doing so, it's already delivering parts 10x faster and 50% cheaper than the industry standard, slashing some lead times from 18 weeks to mere days. So that is incredible.
Part of their value proposition, Hadrian's, is that they can create jobs too, good jobs. So they can take somebody with no manufacturing background, turn them into a skilled machinist in 30 days. And again, that's not making sneakers or even making cars. It's making tomorrow's high value goods.
Yeah, I recently, so first of all, Eric Prince recommended this book, Freedom Forge, to me. And then I walk into Casey Handemer, the CEO of Terraform Labs, HQ. What book is sitting there, Freedom Forge? So I was like, here's something twice, gotta order it. Basically, the whole thesis of the book is that, soldiers were heroes during World War II. But actually, what really won the war for America was we were able to make all this stuff. You're just able to outmake, Nazi Germany. And I think that's very, very important just to frame it. Because people have been like, listen, we have all this stuff. Why do we, why do we need to bring it back to America? That's one, the historical perspective. Two is within living memory. Do you remember during New York where, the richest city in the world, or during COVID, sorry, the richest city in the world told its doctors to bring in ponchos and raincoats to cut up and use as protective equipment during the height of COVID, and we couldn't get enough antibiotics and all these drugs. So that's the reason you need to bring certain things back to America. So yeah, I think it sometimes flies over people's heads how important this stuff is.
What do you make of the fact, every time I hear news about tariffs, mostly what I think is how stupid and counterproductive it is. But my mind always goes back to Gundo, where the innovators, that guys who are actually going to drive the reindustrialization of America, were more or less pro-tariffs. What do you make of that fact?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I guess they see that it kind of didn't. There's so many examples over the last couple of decades, solar being one of them, where essentially China, it's not a whole, it's not fair trade. It's not free trade. It's like, hey, China pours all this money into solar panels and then puts all the US companies out of business. Right. And you could say that's going to happen in battery. It kind of already happened in batteries, actually. And it's happening with EVs. Maybe Tesla is the sole exception. So I would say it comes from a place of wanting great American companies to succeed and then seeing the unfair trade practices from China. But I just don't think that's a long-term solution is kind of what I'd say. I could almost see the world splitting into iPhone versus Android, where the top 10% of people own an iPhone, and that's America. And then the bottom 90% own an Android, and China just sells cheap stuff to the rest of the world. But I still think the only long-term solution is to make stuff better, is to innovate, is to be 100x, 1000x better. Yeah, that's the other thing about tariffs, is that what's the ultimate end goal here? Is it actually more free trade at the end of the day? Is like the goal to slap everyone with tariffs and then get them to reduce the tariffs on America? That's a good solution. I'd be in favor of that.
Yeah. I guess the mission in life of all these Gundo founders is to reindustrialize America, is to reverse America's industrial decline, and they see the proximate cause of America's industrial decline as like globalization, free trade, where we sent the labor is expensive in America, so we started doing it overseas. So it makes sense from that perspective. But I think if you really trace it back, not to get into a completely different topic, but I think America's industrial decline can be more closely traced to how expensive energy has gotten here. Like, we stopped getting more and more cheap energy, which is probably the real reason it was so much cheaper to manufacture stuff overseas in addition to labor costs.
I'll do you one better. What about all the crazy regulations that make it almost impossible to build anything in America? Like if you were going to dedicate the whole uh the full weight and force of the federal government towards something, and I know the Trump administration is doing this, but you try to get rid of NEPA and you try to get rid of all these crazy blight regulations. You know, I heard the CEO of Boom Supersonic talking recently, and he talked about it took longer or the same time to get the permit to build the factory in North Carolina as it did to build the factory. Elon has said it takes longer to do the paperwork for Starship than it does to build Starship. That is absolutely insane. And there's so many examples that we can point to. So I think that's one of the problems. Like China or wherever, it's just like the 5G tower is going up here, the factory is going up. That's it. It's done. There's no environmental review, and you know we all want a clean world. I have 3 kids, yay! But like there has to be a line somewhere. You know what I mean?
Well, our next topic is drones, and that's a good segue because China owns the world drone market, pretty much because the U.S. banned drones, or they made it so you could only operate a drone within line of sight unless you had a pilot's license. So China is years ahead of us in innovation.
Yeah, there's so you know the big news why we're talking about this is that Zipline, which is the world's largest drone delivery provider, just launched in Dallas. It basically partnered with a Walmart supercenter. If you would live within 2 miles of that supercenter, you can get any of 65,000 items delivered in under 30 minutes, delivered by Zipline for free by air. But the story of Zipline, the more I was thinking about it, is the story of the blight and American innovation over the past, call it 50 years. So you invent something really cool, game changing, wow. And then the regulators say, you know what, guys, can't do that here. So in fairness to them, you know, Zipline is you have to give your hats off to them because they didn't quit, they didn't down tools and just say, oh, you know, the regulators, nothing we can do. They went to the African bush and found a use case which was delivering blood to hospitals in rural Africa. They made it work. They built the world's largest drone delivery network. And now they come back to America with the technology proven out. And I think this is the start of drones really taking off in America.
Yeah, it's worth dwelling on that for a second. Zipline couldn't launch its business in America because of regulations, so they went to Rwanda of all places, and they proved their business model by delivering blood, and it now ships 70% of all Rwanda's national blood supply. University of Pennsylvania study found that Zipline reduced maternal mortality by 88% in the hospitals it serves because it gets blood places much faster than any other method, like driving it there, for example. So, I mean, that's a long way of saying it saved a lot of moms' lives.
Incredible. Incredible. I mean, we often talk about the power of stories and how facts don't change people's minds, stories do. And I know Zipline had this great thread recently about some girl that got bit by a venomous snake. And basically, the only reason she's alive today is because Zipline delivered the antidote in time. But they should literally go back and get the story of every mother's life they saved and just blast the internet. And they should put up posters in Times Square about this of the stories, because that is what, like, delivering burritos faster, like, okay, like I could take it or leave it, but saving a mom's life, like, that is incredible. And that's why drones are important at the end of the day.
Yeah, and this is one little tiny country in Africa. Imagine if this was deployed across the world, how many millions of lives it would save.
I mean, even in rural America and rural parts of Ireland and Europe, like, that's a problem. I mean, I know people that live in rural parts of Ireland and they have to drive 2 hours to a hospital. If something goes seriously wrong, you're dead. That's the end of it. I mean, there's all these. The Sweden did a study recently of defibrillators. So someone has a heart attack, and it's something like every minute or two that you go without your heart being revived, it's like your chances of surviving decreased by 50%. So it's like a talk about a rapid fall off. So if you can get medicine, defibrillators, medical equipment to someone seconds faster, it's literally the difference between life and death.
Yeah, this is exciting. I hope regulations make it possible for Zipline to expand beyond the Dallas suburb where it currently operates fast. If you think about how hard logistics is, like some of the biggest companies in America, UPS, FedEx, Amazon, like their whole business model is figuring out logistics, and logistics is hard and it's costly because you have to pay a UPS driver. What is it, $170,000 a year now? And you have gas and you have trucks that break down. And drones, they have little problems too. Maybe they'll be noisy, maybe they'll be a little bit annoying, but they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be better than the alternative. And they for sure are better than the alternative in stuff that like delivering blood where time is of the essence. And I think it's only a matter of time until they're better than the alternative in delivering pretty much everything.
So I'm rationally optimistic about this one because the regulation stuff, because here we are, the FAA granted Zipline and other companies exemptions, basically for those beyond visual line of sight things. And I think when they see all the success stories and how powerful this stuff is, they're really going to stand up and take notice, and other places will roll them out on the noise. Like I'll tell you, the drone story I have, as you know, I got first of all to the speed. I had to order two burritos because I wanted to film it and I missed the first one. The thing arrived so fast, and then it was actually noisy, the drone I had. But these Zipline drones, which is the noise is one of the main concerns. Like, oh, like, you know, it's 10 p.m. at night. You have young kids. Like, you don't want a noisy airplane over your house, right? But these drones are all electric, Zipline drones. So they will be, you know, people complain that electric cars are so quiet that they're going to cause accidents. That's basically the same as Zipline now. So I think it's one of those things like, oh, here's a problem. Well, then it's like you're going to make $1 billion fixing that problem. So always bet on the innovators.
This is so exciting because it's a new industry where there's so much innovation yet to be done. This is the worst drones are ever going to be. The costs should decline and quality should skyrocket, just like TVs. Whereas like the old stuff around logistics, like cars and human drivers, kind of gone as far as it can go with innovation, right? So I'm excited
Yeah.
to see this new industry blossom and how much better it gets and how quickly.
Hey, if I ask you, I know I'm going to ask you on the spot here, so you're not going to have a good answer. What is the greatest logistics company ever? And it's not in the business of logistics. It sells a soft drink.
Uh, I don't know.
Well, what's
Monster,
the? You can go.
Celsius,
No, go again. It's a famous one. Begins with C.
Coca-Cola.
Literally when have you not gone to a country and seen a Coca-Cola? It's like, oh, middle of Rwanda, middle of Zambia, Mount Everest, turn right at the pyramids, Coke.
That's a
Everywhere.
good point.
Everywhere. But yeah, just a thing on Zipline. So I think so first of all, drones, I think starting out they were all human pilot, right? And that's the case in Ireland here with Mana. They're literally human pilot. Someone is flying them. Whereas these Zipline drones, they're fully autonomous. And the cool thing about these is that Zipline proved out the first version of its technology, which is it was essentially like a model airplane that launched into the air with a slingshot. But they've developed a whole new system called Platform 2. I think it's the coolest one I've ever seen. So basically, the drone launches from this what looks like a street light, hovers up into the air, and it has a drone inside it that has the package. So the main drone hovers 300 feet up in the air, stays up there, and it lowers a microwave size it's called Zip down to the ground, and then it opens and delivers your package. And then goes back up. It's just pretty incredible, and you can imagine in a couple of years these things are just everywhere. You look up, you might see them, but you're certainly not going to hear them. And I think it's going to be. I think people aren't prepared for the change that they're going to bring. It's going to be like smartphones in some way, but a lot healthier.
Yeah, you take something as serious as blood, and it's blood delivery, and it's obvious why speed is so important. But something a little less serious, like needing your kids needing cough medicine in the middle of the night, you're gonna get dressed and drive to the store. What if you could order cough medicine and it gets delivered by drone in 10 minutes? It sounds pretty incredible. And there's all sorts of like, you and I have talked about the example of Walmart, where so before Walmart existed in the U.S. Now Walmart exists. It led to lots of knock-on effects, like, for example, the flourishing of American suburbs, because that's where it served the suburbs. So, like, what are what are drones going to lead to? And we don't even know yet, but we have some pretty good ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think they're going to be everywhere and they're going to touch all our lives. So I would just ask people to think about what you do for a living and somehow working drones into that. It's a very, very vague answer. Actually, do you know what I was thinking of? Have you ever flown a drone? I've neither. I was actually looking up the local store here. You can get a pretty good DJI drone for $400. I was like, I should get one and just play around with it with the kids because there was this great story. I think Josh Wolf tweeted about it a few years ago now. But the best drone pilot in the world is actually a 12-year-old girl, or was a 12-year-old girl from Thailand. And she basically, you know, flying a drone is very like playing a video game. And she was an avid video gamer. So I almost think this is a skill, teaching kids about drones and how they work and what they do and why they're better than what came before and how to fly them should be a skill that you teach your kids, because you just never know whether that's going to come in where that's going to come in handy.
How far away do you know are autonomous, like fully autonomous swarms of drones?
I think you have rudimentary versions, but I think they're still a couple of years away right now. Although, you know, I think it's like limited version, right? So it's almost like, you know, self-driving cars. It's kind of like Google had a self-driving car working in 2009, but it was able to go on it was able to go on like one track. And if you put anything in its way, it kind of messed up. And of course, then over the next 15 years, it developed. We were in a Waymo a couple of weeks ago in LA together. It developed to be the best the best driver in the world. I feel like drones are maybe in the early days of self-driving cars a little bit more, because I don't know if you saw, but a company in Shenzhen, China, recently broke the world record for 10,100 synchronized drones. That's incredible. 10,000 drones. And they were flying fully autonomous, but they were pre-programmed. So I don't completely know where we are when it comes to autonomous drones being able to make decisions on their own, on the fly, all the time, in any location.
Yeah, but it's only a matter of time.
It's only a matter of time. I mean, again, it's kind of like this is the worst that they're ever going to be, and the technology is only going to get better. And now I think America kind of opening up to drones is like a giant carrot for everyone to get involved, because it's like, oh, okay, largest market in the world's opening up. Well, now my target market just got 10x bigger. Now I do worry about, not worry about, but China still dominates drones, the making of drones. So that's something that America will have to get a handle on. And yeah,
Has that regulation been changed yet, or is there any talk about changing it?
it's just exemptions so far. So it's kind of like the rule is still on the books, but they're handing out exemptions. And I think it's one of those things where Zipline took a lot of arrows in the back, and other companies as well. And you know, it's actually kind of like self-driving cars in the sense that you have to move really, really slowly or prove out your technology in different markets, and then you kind of like you end up asking for permission then when you've spilled a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
All right, let's move on to an area that is not moving slow, that is moving very, very fast. It's AI models. So you told me that you recently made a change in your favorite AI model, which is a big deal because you were a big Claude fanboy there for a while.
Big Claude fan. Cancelled my subscription 2 days ago now. So I mean, I haven't used any of OpenAI's products, so ChatGPT, in probably a year or more. And you know, I just started. So latest model O3 was released 2 weeks ago. It's incredible, along with the 4.0 model. So basically, O3 is the first widely available reason model plus agent. It basically thinks through multi-step chains internally and then decides which tools it should use to carry out the job. So should I go search the web? Should I run some code? Should I zoom in on the image? And that's how it finishes the job. And one of the impressive things, which actually DeepSeek, I think, was the first one to do this, is you can see it thinking in the initial response. So it's kind of like, okay, Dan asked me to book a holiday to Italy, searching the best.
It writes out its thought process.
You can see it. So it's really cool. Have you used it much?
No, I haven't used it at all.
I'm using that in your account.
Is that the one that's $200 a month?
I believe so. I believe
I
so. Yeah.
lose track of this. It moves so fast. You lose track of what you subscribe to, what you don't. I was trying to think of an analogy of like an exciting new technology where it moves so fast that you're like getting new subscriptions and canceling new subscriptions and like trying new stuff all the time because there's OpenAI, there's Google, there's DeepSeek, there's Claude. The closest thing I could think of was streaming, where
Yeah.
there's like 7 different streaming companies and you're always getting subscriptions and canceling them to watch different shows.
I guess, yeah. I that's the first thing that popped into my mind too. I guess the big thing is that streaming makes you lazy and sit on the couch and your brain turns off. AI is the complete opposite of that. It is a superpower, but you really need to know how to use it. Is the way I think about it. It's kind of like it's the opposite of streaming, but it's also the opposite of TikTok. Like TikTok is just sit there mindlessly scrolling. AI is like you have to spend 10, 20, 30 hours with each model to figure out how to use it. But my God, if you can prompt it in the right way and figure out how to use it correctly for you, this is a superpower. So, our friend Tyler Cowan, April 16th, he calls AGI Day because that was the day, Artificial General Intelligence Day, because that was the day O3 was released. And he said in his post that on the day, he said, I think it is AGI. Seriously, try asking it lots of questions. Then ask yourself, how much smarter was I expecting AGI to be? Maybe AGI is like porn. I know it when I see it.
Do you think it's AGI?
I don't even know what that means, and I don't have the brain power to think about it. All I would say is that, people like to talk about AI and it seems like somewhat detached from them. This is like, it's kind of like you can't go to SpaceX and use one of the rockets. You can use drones, I guess. You can use self-driving cars. But this is one thing that you literally don't have to get out of your pajamas or out of your house to use and figure out if we're talking crap or not. Just go on to ChatGPT and try this model for yourself, and you will see how powerful it is. Now, as I said, you do have to know how to use it. But as regards editing, researching, one of the big things I've done over the past week or so is that, you see all these YouTube videos and you're like, man, I don't have an hour to watch this one and then 3 hours to watch this one. I just copy the whole transcript in and be like, and give it a specific prompt to pull out the most important insights relating to this thing I'm working on. Boom. 5 videos you've watched, you've extracted insights from in 15 minutes. It's incredible.
That's good. I like that. There might be a business idea in there. Yeah, whenever somebody sends me an article, I read it. And whenever somebody sends me a video, if it's more than like 5 minutes, I'm like, how am I going to have time to do this?
Your time bankrupt. You have a business to run and 2 kids to look after. Your time bankrupt. One of the other things, not necessarily O3 specific. We'll talk a little bit more about O3, but I've been using ChatGPT voice mode with my kids, and I feel guilty because it's on my phone. But then I'm like, no, actually, them understanding how to use AI is going to be critical to basically getting ahead in the world. And my daughter actually asks a pretty intelligent questions like, how does the brain work and how does the internet work and things like that. And the voice mode's a game changer because it essentially removes me as the intermediary. She can talk to it and it just talks back.
I've never tried that. I'll have to try that.
Yeah. Have you seen any good use cases for O3 so far? I can talk to a couple of them if you want.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so there's this, I didn't know until recently, but there's this whole industry called, basically, it's called geoguessing. And it's almost like trivia, but they give you a picture of some random location and then you have to guess where that is. And O3 went up against a expert level geoguesser recently and absolutely wiped the floor. As in the sense, he gave random picture of some road, could be anywhere in the world. And in some cases, it was getting within 10 kilometers of the actual place, which is just incredible. And the thing I think about is like, okay, we figured out this model is a superhuman geoguesser. What else have we not figured out has superpowers with?
Yeah. You imagine the implications or like the positive effect that could have on law enforcement, first of all, like figuring out a case.
Right. Exactly. And then you might remember back to our first topic, tariffs, a couple of weeks ago. the whole thing about how the tariffs were calculated, it's basically rumored, and people have kind of reverse engineered into it, that someone in the White House was like, how are we going to calculate what tariffs to put on the countries?
Yeah.
Oh, let's just ask AI to do it. So this is the first large scale application of AI technology to basically govern. So it's pretty incredible.
You know what I'm surprised we haven't seen much of is deep fakes of like political figures or actors, or like legitimately tricking people with a deep fake.
I remember seeing this stat that sightings of Bigfoot spiked when the internet, or reports of Bigfoot when the internet came along, and I think then they collapsed. I think that was at the start, everyone was like fooled, and then after the 15th time, everyone's like, oh, it's obviously fake. Do you remember, what, 2 years ago now, everyone was like, deep fakes, deep fakes, deep fakes. Oh my God, wait till you see how bad this gets during the election. Guys, here we are, May 1st, 2025. I don't see any problem. So I think all these things are just overblown. Yeah.
All right, you got a dose of optimism for us?
Do you know what? I don't have a dose of optimism, but I will, to make up for it, I'm going to borrow a idea I got from John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, who I got to talk to in London, and he built this thing into their basically the culture of Whole Foods. It was an appreciation. It was speaking out loud about something or someone that you appreciate, specifically saying it to the person's face about, thank you. And it just made, it built rapport between the teams. Everyone was working really hard. You don't feel like you're appreciated. And this kind of overcame that and basically built a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. So Dan, I want to say to you, thank you for all the hard work and effort and the things that you've taught me over the years. Wouldn't be where I am without you, and may long our business relationship continue.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Right back at you.
There you go.
All right, viewers, you can boost our optimism by hitting the subscribe button, ringing that bell, and leaving us a comment. This helps our channel grow. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next